Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Honor to the Sublime One, the Worthy One, the Fully Enlightened One. Oh, let's look. That's because Johan does not have voice turned on. Or, at least, he does not have a dot. Do you see this little emoticon that I always do? This little emoticon is a symbol of my lack of mindfulness. Because I do it all the time. And you know what it is? I'm not spending the extra half a second to make sure that the shift is held down before I hit the zero. Like that. The power of mindfulness, even with emoticons. Okay. So we're always in a rush, aren't we? Always in a rush, even when we don't think that we are. But that's not the topic for tonight. The topic for tonight came only about 20 minutes ago, which is a first. I think I have talked about this topic in the past. I'm not sure. I'd have to look to see if it was one of my recorded topics or not. But the topic is going to be on expectations. What they are, where they come from, and why they rule us. Let's see. Okay. I'll give it a second to see if Johan can get the voice. Okay, so I'll continue the explanation of how this topic came to me from while Johan is relogging. Just on Facebook about 40 minutes ago, a friend of mine who's a Buddhist, and he posted the topic, what is hardest in life? And then I made a little quote from the movie Conan. I don't know if you probably nobody knows that movie from the 80s, but and then I said, do you know the from the movie where the father goes, what is best in life? And then Conan has that quote. So I did that, but then I said, really what I said was that the hardest thing in life is that we make life hard on our own. And somebody else said managing expectations. And then there was like a little ding 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 in my mind, and I said, whoa, that's a good topic for a talk. Just in time, because I have a talk in about 40 minutes, so it worked out. And that is ironically what expectations is all about. So what is an expectation? Expectation is simply using experiences of the past to judge what will happen in the future. And while we're doing that, where are we not? We're not in the one place that we're always supposed to be, right? If we're trying to practice. Yes, we're not in the present. Not in the present at all. Can you hear me, Johan? I say that you were just transmitting.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay. If you can, try to make the transmitting not happen while I'm talking so that we don't clash to each other. But, okay, so expectations. And we do this all the time. It's something that is almost like it's an evolutionary thing in a lot of ways, right? If you think about to how we were back in the day, right? When we were just, early humans in Africa. And the expectations kind of helped us to survive, right? Expectations, right? If we go there, that's a lion's den. What are we going to expect to do? We expect that we're going to probably get eaten by the lions, right? If we go to a certain tree on a certain type of day, of the year, we expect hopefully to get some kind of fruit. There's always these, what we think, we know, we've been there, we've done it in the past, right? So we kind of have a good estimation, a good hunch that, yeah, this situation will be pretty much the same as the situation that I've experienced in the past. But the problem is, we know because everything is impermanent, that your expectations can be destroyed in a second. And when we have expectations and we attach to them, when those expectations are proven wrong, we suffer because of it. We have much negative feelings about that. It should have been this way. It should have been that way. You get married with the expectation that you're going to live happily ever after and grow old together, right? But what happens? 50%, over 50% of marriages now end in divorce. And then, of course, not even just divorce, then you can lose your spouse to death. What happens? We expect that we'll probably live a pretty good long life. Life expectancy 74. So I should be able to live to 74 at least. Maybe 80, hopefully 90. We'll see what happens. And then what happens? When you're 22 years old, you get in a crash and you die. Boom! So much for your expectations, right? Expectations can also, though, be used in a negative manner in terms of if you're always having the negative fault-finding mind, as Ajahn Brahm calls it, the fault-finding mind. It could be like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Oh, today's gonna stink. Why bother doing that? This is gonna happen. Why bother trying to ask that girl or that boy out? They're just gonna say no. Why bother trying to go for that promotion? They're just gonna say no. That's expecting on the other opposite. Before we were having positive expectations that things are going to go well. But you can fall into this trap of being so engrossed in the negative fault-finding mind that you start to be negative, have negative expectations of everything. Well, life is just going to suck. No use trying to do anything about it. Oh well. And so you just see that expectations is kind of like a prison, isn't it? It's what we have made up in our mind, but doesn't necessarily at all exist in reality. We are hoping, expecting for good things to happen. And sometimes bad things happen, sometimes good things happen too. Or we're expecting bad things to happen. And you don't have to be a depressed, person to expect bad things to happen. We do this all the time. Everybody does. And there are some people who have like anxiety and stuff more than others, but we all, to some level or another have these expectations, either negative or positive. So, the way to get out of this prison of expectations is to not be in the present or not to be in the past or the future. It's just to be in the present. To just see what happens. And when you are able to be in the present and see what happens and accept what happens, you'd be surprised how things turn out. When you're always thinking that, oh, this is going to be bad, things are going to happen, it's all, when you're always thinking negative, negativity tends to come. And every once in a while you might be surprised, wow, it turned out pretty good today, for once. But if you start to think positive and know that when you tell yourself and you train your mind that no matter what happens, there's no expectations, no matter what happens, I'll do my best to act skillfully and create a better world for myself. When you can do that, you can face anything. There's no mental anguish there. There's no mental anguish in terms of, what I'm thinking of is like, say, preparing for a test, or going to do some kind of very physical endurance event or something like that, where all kinds of things can happen. You can fail the test. You can fail out of school. You can fail the test to try to get a promotion, or you can try to do this physical event and you can hurt yourself, right? So our mind worries about these things, and we have these expectations. Oh, there's a good chance of this happening, and so then our mind tries to think of ways to stop it from happening. And your mind is just going around in circles and just being anxious and being the monkey mind, being just not being at peace. And then this is the same situation in many, many types of life situations. And what I've found personally is when I get wrapped up in those kind of thought processes and thought loops, I just try to close my eyes, take a few deep breaths, and then just let what happens. And, I might have a little bit of peace for a little bit, and then my mind starts to go again. And much like the advice from Ajahn Brahm, as a matter of fact, I learned this from Ajahn Brahm. I'll be like, my real name is Joe, so I don't call myself Jayantha in real life, at least not yet. So I say, Joe, you're, what do I say? It's okay, Joe. You're doing your best. You can deal with these situations. You can be at peace. Just do your best and just do your best and accept and try to act skillfully. and that's skillfully in mind, body, and speech. So, you're being kind to yourself, being kind to my mind, saying it's okay if you're, not being mindful, if you're not being in the present moment. You're being at peace, being calm with yourself. You're not judging yourself. And it's amazing when you do that, how this level of acceptance comes, and you're able to just move to being the observer of your mind going through all of these mental Olympics, these the expectations, and trying to manage the expectations, trying to negate any kind of negativity or possible negative actions that might happen. And when you're able to become just the observer and not feed into it, they play through like, watching a TV show or watching a movie, and then they just end. So, and then you're calm and at peace. And until the monkey mind and fault finding mind comes back, you're okay. Whatever happens, happens. Thinking positive will almost always lead to better results. Even if they're negative results, they're still better than they could have been if you were a negative Nancy, as they call. And this is kind of where I came up with my the positive thought mantra that I talk about all the time. And changing my mind from the negative fault-finding mind to positive. Just reiterating to myself that no matter what happens, it'll always be better if I think positive and just allow what happens to happen, and deal with it with mindfulness. Because that's the best. When you're mindful and in the present, then that is the best way for you to know what to do in that situation. You're not 10 minutes ahead, so that when you try to do a little smiley face, you mess up and you do the weird mouth open face instead of the smiley face. We all do this. This is the way it is. And when you come to realize that, you're not all that special, that you're connected with everybody, and that everybody is going through the same thing, you just realize it's life. It's part of what this being, this mental and physical being, and part of this existence is all about. So that leads to less expectations. I don't think that you'd probably get rid of all expectations until you're enlightened or something like that, or at least very, very high up on the path. But we can allow ourselves through the practice to not let the expectations control or rule our lives. It's not necessarily that the expectations are a bad thing, because really they're just part of our mind process. And just like any part of our mind process, we just want to observe them and see them as they truly are. So we don't want to say, "Oh, expectations. You're bad expectations," or you're a bad mind, bad Joe for having expectations. We don't want to do that either. That's not part of the practice. But we want to be able to see these expectations for what they truly are. And when we can do that, we can accept them, and they just come and go, you know, in your mind. So, other than, practice in our daily life of moving through while we're, not practicing or not being mindful, I think one of the easiest ways to deal with expectations is when it comes up in your mind. You say, what do I expect to do at lunch today? I expect to go to the local convenience store, and I expect to get this, and I expect to get that, and then I expect to go back, and have lunch in my car, listen to the radio or something like that. You have these expectations, or you go, your job or whatever your job is, dealing with a client of some sort or dealing with your boss. You go into work and you say, and you expect, this guy's gonna, be negative to me and angry to me and this and that. When these things occur, you can just observe them, and you could say, perhaps. Or you could say one of Ajahn Chah's favorite sayings, which I like a lot: that is uncertain. A while ago I started saying that because, in today's society, everybody's like, hey, what's up? Or, hey, how you doing? And, it's just like an honorific. People don't really expect you to say, well, I'm this and I'm that and I'm this. And so for a while I just started saying that is uncertain. And that confused people. And it actually caused more wasting of time or more having to be in that moment than if I would have said, yeah, I'm doing okay, and then you just move on. But really, that was what I was trying to do, was to remind myself it's uncertain. I don't know how I am. And however I think I am might not be right. And a second from now, it might be different. So, chasing expectations like this is exhausting. And so when you see those expectations that occur in your mind, just say, that is uncertain. It may be as I expected. It may not be as I expected. It may be something completely and totally different that you never even thought could happen. Because life surprises you that way. Anytime you think that you have life pinned down, you know what life is all about. It comes at you with a left hook or whatever, to use like a boxing analogy. It comes out with a surprise punch or a surprise event. You say, wow, I never expected this. Right? All things are always uncertain. And expectations are a good way of allowing you to practice that knowledge, to see that reality, that realization that all things are uncertain. Because, 9 times out of 10, okay, maybe the event happens and it happens exactly as you expected. And so you go into the event on the 10th time and bam, it's totally different. Uh-oh. What happened? Impermanence happened. That's what happened. Because all things are uncertain. And all things are caused by conditions that we might be able to see some, but we can't see all, because there's such a web of causes and conditions that go deep, deep back into the past. I can give a real life example. Some of you know that I do child protective services, and for a couple years I actually did the investigations. Like when somebody calls in, oh, this happened, this kid, the parents did this to the kid, or the parents did that to the kid. And when you first start out doing that, the allegations are always so horrible sounding and so horrendous, and oh my God, I can't believe this, I can't believe that, and you go out and you expect that you might have to do a removal, or the parents might want to hurt you or something like this, and you show up and it's nothing like what the allegations say on the paper. You say, wow, I had all this anxiety and all this preparing because I had expectations, and then it's nothing. Now, of course, rarely it was something. Like, oh, wow, okay, so you might even get to the point where you've done so many I did 200 investigations, just about 200 in 2 years, and it's like you might get to the point where you say, yeah, you know how many of these I've done? They always come in and they always sound like the world's gonna end, but it's really nothing. And then you walk in, and oh my God, mom has a crack pipe, and there's all kinds of crazy. It's like, oh boy, this time it really is something. You expected that, yeah, it's a BS. I'll be good. I'll be home by like 5-6 o'clock. You expected that, and then, boom, that's when it happens otherwise. It's almost like it almost gets to the point where you kind of feel, if you're looking at your expectations, you almost kind of feel like there's the devas, or the yakas. Like the devas are like the deities, like that sometimes they play with like humans, their lives, and like in Christian, that would be like the angels and the demons. The demons in Buddhism are the yakas. So it's almost like there's these unseen beings that are playing with you, right? that get a kick out of putting it to you, because you expect that this is going to happen, and then it's like, oh really? You expect that, huh? Well, now that's going to happen. And it throws you for a loop, and it takes you a couple seconds to get back on the path, get back on track, and say, okay, crap, it happened this way this time. So now I have to deal with it. And this happens, if you are in any level of the practice, and you're able to observe your mind a little bit, you can see that this happens. If you're able to start observing your thoughts, then you can see what your mind does, and eventually, after acceptance and observing, you start to see the reality, and then when it comes up, it doesn't bother you as much, or it doesn't have as much control over you. These expectations come, and you're like, okay, yeah, it might happen that way, it might not, it's uncertain. And then that actually better prepares you for what might happen, because you don't have any expectations. Anything can happen, and you're just there and ready to go and to deal with whatever comes up. So I guess that's, for the most part, the end of my talk on expectations. Just like anything in Buddhism, it's not a negative thing. It's not something that, oh, we should try to avoid at all times, or we should try to suppress, get away, expectations, bad expectations. Because we know that's not how it works. And the more you practice, the more you realize it definitely doesn't work that way. It just makes it worse. So all you can do is accept, observe, and watch. That's it. And the more you do that, the more you see it as it truly is, and the less power it has over you. Which actually means the more in the present you are, which is always a good thing. The few times in my practice that I've been able to be completely and utterly in the present with no thoughts of past or future, no monkey mind, I can only imagine how that would be 24/7, 365. It would be an amazing thing. But I'm not quite there yet, and I'm sure neither is anybody here. If you are, please come up and talk to us about it. Because I need to learn some more about that. But okay, I guess we're good. Any comments, questions about expectations, dealing with expectations in life? Expectations are really at the core of, or part of the core that makes us suffer. Because we don't realize that all phenomena are part of, or have three characteristics, right? Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self. Yes, a boat being pushed around all over by the waves of your crazy monkey mind. It's like being in a storm. I just watched that movie, The Life of Pi. Actually, that's what it reminded me of when you just said being in the boat, which was an interesting movie. But that being said, yeah. So the funny thing is, what I've come to find in doing this, kind of like, not necessarily teaching meditation, but giving the little insight that I have, and even in real life too, talking to people, because people see that I meditate, they know I'm a Buddhist, whatever. So they, the biggest comment is, oh, my mind is always chattering, always doing this, always doing that. And I say, yeah, welcome to reality. Welcome to being human. There's nothing in our mind. And I see this in my own experience, because I thought, you see how your mind, your ego goes, oh, well, I'm special. Or not even I'm special, but, not many people have to deal with meditation like I do, because I have a little asthma, or I have loose skin, and how can I get the lotus position, or I have this, or I have that. And the more you practice, the more you let go of that, because the more you just see that no matter what you think that you've done or that you're dealing with that's special, people have dealt with it in the past. And we're so much the same in our minds that you're able to actually, when you realize that, it's easier to let go of everything, because that's kind of moving towards anatta, that's moving towards not self. When the ego is kind of being picked away at, and you're starting to realize, yeah, that's just phenomena, that's just what it is. It's not, there's no, I'm this or I'm that. Your ego likes to say that, though. That's why I did that talk a couple months back. Ego, thou art crazy. Yeah, Eva, what's the question? Yeah. But I like the prison analogy, with our mind, period. because the prison analogy works both ways, right? We are really, our mind, we create a prison for ourselves in our mind. But the ironic thing is, you could be in a physical prison and your mind can be free. So that's why I like that prison analogy, because the real prison has nothing to do with the physical world. The real prison has to do 100% wholly with your mind. And the more you realize that, the easier this mind prison gets. Yeah, all of your focus goes into that thought. I was doing that today in meditation when I was doing my walking meditation. You have a thought and you just go right into that thought, all of your focus, because your mind thinks that it's something that's very, very important right now in this moment that you have to figure out. And so your mind goes right to that thought, but then so quickly that thought leads to 3 or 4 other thoughts that you forgot the first thought in the first place. And it goes through this line of thinking from question to to trying to solve something, to question to trying to solve something. It just goes through this whole line of thought until all of a sudden it's like snap and you're out. And then you're just like, what happened? What was I doing during that time? You know what's scary? I've seen in my own experience, when I'm on long drives, right? When you're doing like 5-6 hour drives, and you don't fall asleep. You don't, it's nothing. Your eyes are open. Physically, you're doing everything you need to do, but your mind just kind of drifted. And you come back and you're like, whoa. And this is, and I thought to myself, how am I still, when my mind was like thinking or going into this, thought process where I didn't feel like I was there, but my eyes were open and straight looking at the cars, my hands were moving, and you're like, damn, that's scary. It's like, I can only imagine what it would be like to drive drunk or to fall asleep and drive. That would be horrible. But that's like what the mind does, and it's amazing that you can be like in this daydream or this thought process of trying to solve something, but yet also be doing something else entirely. Like I was doing my walking meditation this morning, and then I started to think. I was still walking. I wasn't like falling apart. I was still doing my walking, but my mind felt like it was somewhere else. My mind was wholly encapsulated on this problem that I needed to solve. And there's always another problem to solve, right? So your mind is always going. Always. And this is what causes people to have so much anxiety. This is what causes so many people today to not be able to sleep. Well, that, and also electronics until they go to bed. Electronics until you go to bed is no good. It doesn't help you sleep either. But the mind itself, when you're unable to stop thinking about these problems over and over and over and over and over constantly, it's just completely and utterly draining. And so it just spirals you down into medications and depressions and all this kind of stuff. So we want to reverse that, but we can't force the reversal. We can only be kind to ourselves, to our body and our mind, and observe and allow things to happen and not get attached to them. And that's not easy. That comes with practice. But the more you practice, the less attached you get to what comes up. And the easier your life becomes, because your mind is more able to be at peace. And it's just a gradual progression. It just gets more and more and more and more that way. At least that's been my limited experience. I can't talk too much beyond that because I haven't been there yet. But I can at least talk about what I have experienced. But it's hard to be able, once your mind is in that thought process, it's very, very hard to stop it. And if you're able to, I try not to stop it. What I try to do is I try to step back and become the observer. And that's something that takes a lot of practice. It's not easy. It's not even something that I can necessarily do at will, you know. But when you can, you feel that the mind process still keeps going, but you're just observing it. You're not caught in it. It's not sweeping you away. You're back to the present moment, observing your mind, and then it just keeps going, and then it just stops, like breaking the loop of thought. That's a good comment. So instead, you can't force it. You can't try to. It's like trying to. A freight train is coming, and you just try to stand there and hold your hands out and stop it. You're not Superman, so it's not going to work. The freight train's going to barrel right over you, and you're going to wonder, oh, what the heck happened? You just got to let that freight train happen. You just, if you're Superman, you fly up and you're just watching it, and then eventually it just runs out of gas and it stops. It disappears. That's how you do it. But being able to catch yourself, to be able to get back to that takes practice. A lot of practice. Flying up and watching is just being the observer. Yes, it is a different mood. It's something that in a lot of ways also kind of happens by itself. In a lot of ways you can't really force that either. You can't really, you can try, sometimes it works, but it's not easy. Nothing about this practice is easy. If it was, I'm pretty sure by now everybody would pretty much be enlightened and there would be no more samsara. Samsara is pretty much assured to go on for a heck of a long time to come. So all those people who took the bodhisattva vows that they would be the last one to be enlightened, it's going to be a long time. So until that time, we can only just practice and try to observe and come to know the true nature of our mind. So any comments, questions? If not, we can move towards ending for tonight. The answer is almost always meditation. At least that's the Buddha's answer. But the meditation in conjunction with the morality and with the generosity, living a good life, meditating, This is how you advance on the path. This is how the practice, this is how you learn to let go. And they all work in conjunction. The more of a skillful life you lead, the easier it is to meditate, which means you gain more further insight and you lead a more skillful life. Because you're starting to realize how things really are. And that's when expectations start to go out the window. So, okay. So I guess unless there's any final comments, questions, we will end for today. Thank you all for coming and sharing in the Dhamma and participating. It's always good when we can participate and discuss together. So until next time, friends, Sukhi Hantu.